Hey everybody, welcome back to Political Science 101 for Simmons College. Welcome back to my garage. It is Thursday, June 11th, and as promised, I'm posting these videos once a week on Thursdays. Please watch them at your convenience and let me know in the comments below that you saw the video. I saw that I believe all of you did that for last week's video, and I appreciate that. Also, wanted to give you an update on trying to meet in person. As of now, it doesn't look like it's going to happen. I wanted to have a preliminary meeting the semester to start. We tried, but could not find a date that everyone could agree on, that everybody was available. And I understand that. These are unusual times. I know if you're like me, you might be having some childcare issues, and otherwise maybe having some issues with work or trying to find work and those other things that are going on right now with people's schedules, and I understand that completely. So I tried, and if any of you all do want to meet up one-on-one on campus or maybe a nearby coffee shop or something, that's fine. Just reach out to me and let me know, either over text or email, and we can make that happen. We can be socially distanced and do that safely. But I will tell you, we don't have to meet in person for you to get the material that you need to do well in this class and the information that you need to know about American government and politics going forward for the rest of your education and after you leave school as well. So with that, I'll continue these videos once a week. I also asked in the last email if you all had Zoom. Only one person responded as to whether or not they were comfortable using Zoom. We can try to do one Zoom meeting just so we can see each other's faces and kind of get to know each other a minute. But either way, whether we can do that or not, we'll keep doing these videos. Y'all keep letting me know in the comments below that you viewed the video, and that's how you get your participation grade. That's how I take attendance for this summer semester, is through your YouTube comments. Please let me know in those comments if you have any more detailed questions or thoughts or feedback or comments or criticisms of the lectures. Let me know. And if you have any issues that you want to address in the class or you want me to address in the next video, let me know and I'll do that as well. So let's move on to the actual content of the class. These first 2 weeks of real substantive lectures, that's this week and next week on June 18th, we're going to talk about something that's real nuts and bolts, the kind of the underlying information you have to know for the rest of the semester, and that's the structure of American government. This is, I'm going to warn you right now, this is the driest subject matter we're going to cover all semester, but it's very important. Just like in mathematics, how you can't generally learn multiplication and division and algebra until you first learn addition and subtraction back when you're kids in grade school. In American government, if we're going to really get into the interesting stuff, the stuff that impacts all of us, the things that impact public policy, government policies and actions that affect all of our day-to-day lives, then you first have to know a little bit about how our government's structured. First and foremost, the absolute law in the United States, the law that is more powerful than any other type of law, is the United States Constitution. It was passed in the late 1700s by a constitutional convention made up of elected representatives. And as we'll get into more in this class, when I say elected and when I say representatives, of course, these were all white men. They did not accurately represent the population of the early United States or of the colonies that became the United States. And for very different reasons and to a different degree, in different ways, a lot of our elected officials in the United States today do not accurately represent the demographic makeup of this country. Now, that's not going to come as a surprise to any of y'all. I think y'all already know that. But it does bear repeating. The Constitution is the most important, the supreme law of the United States. It's a very important document, and as far as constitutions go, speaking internationally, it's better than most. At the time that it was passed in the late 1700s, it was groundbreaking. innovative. It was as good as that group of men could be expected to produce. But it has some flaws. We'll talk about those later in the semester. Right now, what you need to know is the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Every other type of law, and there are several types of laws, every other type of law in the United States must be within the confines of the language of the Constitution. That is the supreme law, and there's a hierarchy of laws. After the Constitution comes federal statutes. What is a statute? A statute is something that is passed by Congress and signed into law by the president. And that brings us to branches of federal government. For those of you who remember this stuff from high school or even middle school, then I apologize. It's a little bit of a review, but it's so important. It's so critical, because if you want free access to voting polls, if you want the right to vote, if you want to make sure that slavery never comes back to this country, well, at least the old form of slavery, or any slavery at all, if you really truly believe that every person within the borders of the United States, including visitors, immigrants, and natural-born citizens, if you believe that all those people should be treated equally under the law, if you believe that's how things should be, then you need to understand the Constitution and the statutes that are passed by Congress and signed by the president and interpreted by the federal courts. 3 branches of federal government: the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. There is clearly established leadership of each branch, and this is in the Constitution. The legislative branch, that's the House of Representatives and the Senate. 2 chambers, 2 physical rooms of the U.S. Capitol building that these 2 chambers meet in and vote to determine whether or not a statute is going to pass into law. And those chambers, are ran by the Speaker of the House and a team of leadership from both parties in the House of Representatives and the Senate Majority Leader and a team of leadership from the majority party of the Senate. When I say, anytime in this class I say majority party, I want to be clear, that's exactly what it sounds like. Whichever party has the most members in the House or Senate, that's the majority. That's the party that more often than not will determine whether bills pass or don't pass. Because if they have most of the votes to begin with, all they have to do is get their party behind a bill, behind a potential new law, and then take a vote on it. Now, it's a lot more complicated than that, but that's really all they have to do. That's the legislative branch. The executive branch. Leadership of the executive branch is the president. He is the leader. I say he. It could be a person of any gender, but we've had 44 presidents and 45 presidential administrations in this country, and they've all been men. All but one of them have been white men. Again, my personal opinion, that's not cool. It's not cool because it does not represent the population of this country accurately. But we've had 43 presidents. We've had 44 presidents, 43 of them white men. One, as I'm sure you all know, President Obama is the one exception. We have not yet had a female president. We have not yet had a Hispanic president. We have not yet had a black president who was a person who was descended from African slaves. And again, until that changes, the White House does not represent the demographics of this country, and that's a major issue that we'll discuss more than once throughout the course of this semester. But the president is the head of the executive branch. Remember, that's one branch. Legislative branch, you got House and Senate, Speaker of the House, Senate Majority Leader in the Senate. They're in charge of that branch. Third branch, judicial branch, made up of the federal court system. The head of that system is the United States Supreme Court. There's a Chief Justice, but the court votes. There's 9 members of that court, the Supreme Court, and a majority of that court determines very often whether or not the laws of the United States conform to the language of the Constitution. So, legislative branch, they pass statutes into law. Executive branch, they're in charge of executing the law. They're in charge of doing the law. They're in charge of taking the Constitution and taking the statutes passed by Congress and saying, we either will or won't execute those laws, and here's why. That's really what the president does. That's what the executive branch does. All the federal departments and agencies, things like Health and Human Services, things like the Department of Education, Department of Defense, that's a big one, Department of Justice, those fall under the executive branch. Judicial branch, that's just the court system, but that's a really important system because it's like this. If Congress passes a law that says police have a right to come into your home with no warrant, unannounced, for no reason, just because they feel like it, and search your home, your premises for contraband, for drugs or illegal objects, it'd be up to the courts to say, no, the Constitution specifically says they cannot do that. But sometimes the Constitution is not specific. Sometimes it is not explicit. Sometimes the courts have to look at a law and go, is that what the Constitution says? Is that okay according to the Constitution? And that's when it comes up to individual judges to determine whether or not a law is constitutional. So that's the gist of it. Those are the branches of the federal government. I'll tell you very briefly why you should care through a brief example. And I just gave you one about entering your home without a warrant, but what about police activity? What about the things that police do on a day-to-day basis in this country? They do a lot of things, some better than others. But if a police officer pulls you over while you're driving down the road, and he comes up to your window and says, I'm gonna look inside your car. Now, I'm not in a position to give legal advice in this class, but I can tell you, because this class is about the Constitution and about our laws and our government structure, that the officer can't just say that and then do it. He has to have a reason. He has to have what our legal system calls probable cause. Marijuana is illegal in most of this country, including Kentucky. Should it be? We can talk about that later in the semester, but the fact is that it is illegal. It's not legal. And if you have it in your possession, a police officer can take you to jail. Okay. An officer walks up to your car, and he honestly does smell marijuana. That usually means he can search your car. The Constitution says that all of us within this country have a right against search and seizure, against government agents, including police, searching our person or our property and seizing our person or property as evidence to be used against us in court. Unless they have a reason, unless they have a good reason. There's a part of the Constitution, the Fourth Amendment, that says they can't just search you and seize your property for no reason. But they have a reason, like that officer smells marijuana, that generally would give him the right to I'm not saying this is right or wrong, I'm saying it's a legal right he has, then to search your car. That's how the courts have interpreted the Constitution. However, once he finds that marijuana, he's got to stop searching. If he finds a bag of marijuana or a bowl or a joint of marijuana, he arrests you, possession of marijuana, that's illegal, handcuffs you, puts you in the car. He's not allowed to keep going, according to the U.S. Supreme Court's interpretation of the Constitution. Think about that for a minute. The Constitution doesn't say anything about marijuana or cannabis. It doesn't say anything about automobiles and cars and driving down a public highway. Why doesn't it say that? Because the Constitution was written before there were cars. And it was written before marijuana was a widely used recreational and medicinal drug in this country. It doesn't mention any of that stuff. It just says that officers, well, any government agents cannot search your property, seize your property to be used against you as evidence. And it says that you cannot be deprived of your liberty without due process of law. So they can put you in that car and take you to jail. They've got to release you pretty quickly, unless they have a reason to keep you. Again, I'm not saying this stuff is right or wrong, morally or ethically. I'm saying that's the law. And it all comes back to the Constitution. That Constitution that was approved by the first 13 states. The Constitution that must be approved by any new state that wants to join the country. We've had 37 new states and a bunch of territories joined since the Constitution was first passed. They have to agree to follow it if they want to join this country. And although nobody ever asked me whether or not I want to follow the Constitution, by virtue of being present in this country, I have to. But so do the police, and so do the courts, or at least they're supposed to. Whether or not they always do, we'll talk about that later on in this semester. Whether or not they apply the Constitution and the laws of this country equally to all its citizens, well, they don't, first of all, they don't. But we'll talk more about that later. What I want you to know today is that there are 3 branches of government. And those branches make and interpret the laws that govern all of us. Every single law. We'll talk about levels of government next week. That's federal, state, and local. But know that every law that passes, from laws related to marijuana possession, to laws about how fast we can drive on the highway, to laws about what all I have to do if I want to purchase a home for me and my family to live in, to laws about how much taxes I have to pay to maintain that home, to keep that home, to laws about how much taxes I have to pay on my income, on my paycheck. All of those things must follow or fall within the language and the guidelines set by the United States Constitution. So, I ask you all please to read the Constitution. It can be a little dry, but some parts of it are more interesting than others. It's in the appendix of your textbook. And if you don't have a textbook at all, or don't have one with you right now when you're watching the video, Google it. Google United States Constitution, full text. And I guarantee it'll come up on your computer or your mobile device, your phone. Take a look at it. If you start trying to read it and it gets a little boring to you, skip ahead to something like the First Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. Those are parts of the Constitution, they're towards the back of it, that we should all know. Because they impact all of us every day, whether we feel it or not. Whether we know it or feel it, they impact all of us. Take a look at those. Take a look at that document. And let me know in the comments below that you watched the video. If you have thoughts on anything that I've said, some of the illustrations and examples I gave in this video, either let me know in the comments below or shoot me a text or email. I want to thank all of you so much for participating in this non-traditional way that we're doing this class this semester. I want to thank you for watching the video. I want to thank you for committing to work hard and learn the material for this class, even though we can't be together in the classroom every week. I hope you're all having a safe week. I hope you and your families are doing well. Stay safe, stay socially distanced when you can. And I'll see you all next week. Thanks.